Welcome to our webinar. Today's topic are LiveAways in Cyprus. And just by way of starting off, this is a hello from our group that was with me in Cyprus this past March. And you can see by all the smiling faces what a great time we had. We had a lot of fun doing 2 weeks in Limassol last year and 2 weeks in Paphos. Changed it up a little bit this year. And so I'm going to be telling you all about that in a moment. And letting you know what our program is all about. And so let's get started. For those of you who are new to us, I will take a few minutes. And if you're not new, you can take a minute to grab a cup of coffee. Let me just tell you a little bit about what Wheel and Anchor is all about, and what is really proving to be true of late for the groups that have traveled with us this year. It's been long awaited that we've been able to get back out on the road with the pandemic behind us and all. And I know everybody's very excited, and Paula will attest to the fact because the phone is literally ringing off the hook. so that's great, and we're so excited that everybody's in travel mode again, and particularly because I think the message of why we started Wheel and Anchor is really starting to resonate, because what we've discovered, which was the vision that I originally started with, along with Joel and the whole team, is that we take like-minded people. We are almost exclusively Canadian. We have a handful of folks from other places, and we all have in common a desire to do more than just go on a sort of whistle stop tour where it's Thursday, it must be Rome kind of thing. But we take the time, we want to appreciate, we want to understand about what life is like in these other parts of the world, not just sort of see the main sites, but spend a little bit more time. So call it slow travel. And this, in part of slow travel, is associating with yourself with other people who appreciate that as well, who aren't just there ticking off boxes on a list. Because the thing that brings us together is the fact that most of our members in Wheel and Anchor are already quite well traveled, which is not to say that if you are somebody that's new to traveling that you're excluded in any way. But what travelers know more and more is that more is not better, but rather taking more time is really the way to discover the world. And so that is what brings us as travelers together at Wheel and Anchor. That's our philosophy in all of the trips that we do, no matter what format it is, because whether it's a LiveAway type trip or a sojourn or a 5x5, if you're not familiar with these terms, these are some of the types of trips that we offer. The point is that we slow everything down. We have more free time and more opportunity to discover an adventure on our own. And when you do that, you invariably become well connected to your fellow members, because you get to know people already, the groups that have formed. And if you follow our Facebook group, you see some of the connections that people have made with one another, and sharing of stories and so on. And you become also well-traveled. And because in my book, well-traveled is again not about the checklist so much, but it's rather about having had the time to really understand what life is like in a place, and feeling like, particularly on the LiveAway, when you spend a bit more time, it's like the owner of the coffee shop or the laundromat, they know your name, and you know a little bit about them because you've taken the time to chit chat and stop along the way. And so that is really what we are all about at Wheel and Anchor. So without further ado, joining me on the team today. So my name is Gordon. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I think for those of you who don't know me, this is me. And I'm joined today by Paula, who is our senior trip specialist and the one that you will talk to on the phone if you've called in to inquire or make a booking. Good morning, Paula. And Joel, who is hiding in the background, who is doing our technical support and who puts all these beautiful programs together. Today, we are going to take you on a little journey in case you're someone who isn't really aware about our LiveAways and what we do. It's kind of an alternative to going down south for the winter, which is sort of the usual thing that people do, or in addition to go someplace else that's a little bit interestingly. And I'm going to be your guide today, and we're going to take a look at the wonderful island, the country of Cyprus. So first of all, one thing, what's new for us in 2023 is that we have designed these so that they fall sort of back to back to back. And in a few seconds, I'll show you a chart, which is also going to be in the program itinerary for Cyprus, that lays out the different LiveAways that we're going to be doing in the European, in the sort of around the Mediterranean, in the winter, spring of 2023. And so not just there, but of course we have our LiveAways in Thailand, which has been very, very popular, which is immediately followed by Bali, Indonesia, which is immediately followed by New Zealand. And so people have booked into one or more of those as combinations, because you're going a particularly long distance in that case. But we've done the same here for Europe, because although we had an amazing time spending a month in Madeira and a month in Cyprus and a couple of weeks in Tuscany this past season, we found that a lot of people, some people definitely want to go for a month, but others want to go for 6 weeks or for 8 weeks. And so we had several members who joined us for both Madeira and Cyprus. We had some that went to Cyprus and then continued on to Tuscany. And so the idea that you can go for a prolonged period at a reasonable price for the amount of value that you get, the amount of things that we do, means that you could go 2 + 2 + 2, or 2 + 4 + 2, or there's various combinations that you can do with our LiveAway program. So looking at what's in store for next winter, starting in February, we're going to be spending 4 weeks in Madeira. So we call it Madeira 1, Madeira 2. Then during that second part of Madeira, we're going to be also doing a couple of weeks in Malta. So we'll do Malta 1 and Malta 2. And so you could theoretically spend a month in Madeira and then go for the last 2 weeks in Malta, or you could spend 2 weeks in Madeira and go on to Malta for 4 weeks, or Madeira, Malta, and then go on to Sicily, for example. So we introduced recently the first part of our Sicily LiveAways, which is in Syracuse on the East Coast. The second part of our Sicily LiveAway, we'll be doing a couple of weeks in Cefalù, which is on the north coast of Sicily. I'll be bringing that to you. I'm actually headed there next week to check out our accommodations and make sure that we have an exciting program lined up. Of course, this program in Cyprus, you could combine with Sicily, you could combine it before with Malta. So however it works, you've got lots of options in there. And we're going to continue on into the spring in Sorrento by the Amalfi Coast, and then on up to Tuscany. So if you really wanted to go, you could go from February the 6th all the way to May the 17th. And I know that there's a few people out there that actually are interested in going away for that whole period of time. So it's definitely a possibility. But today we're talking about Cyprus. And so I know a lot of people actually don't know much about Cyprus. I mean, those of us, which is the majority of our members at Wheel and Anchor, that lived through sort of the 70s and 80s, are well aware that we of course had UN troops stationed there since Cyprus had its invasion by the Turkish government in 1974. And so Cyprus is a divided island, the northern part being occupied, so-called occupied territory by Turkey. And yet at the same time, and I'll talk about this a little bit when I talk about some of the trips and excursions that we're going to do, it's still one country. And the Cypriots very much feel like they're one country, whether they're Turkish speaking and a Muslim religion, or whether they're Orthodox Cypriots from the south, Greek speaking. But true Cypriots feel like Cypriots, and they feel like that that even though there is a division on the island, it hasn't changed. And so this is part of what makes going to Cyprus so interesting than many other places, because you have a huge long history. And then you have the current affairs of the last 30, 40 years of what's transpired there. And then we look to the future. And so, of course, we're part of the other good thing about Cyprus is it's one of the sunniest places in Europe, being in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. So you've got, the Middle East just for a little bit further to the east, and Egypt just to the south, and of course, Turkey up to the north. And so generally speaking, in wintertime, you enjoy a fairly mild climate. Now, it's not hot, but usually in March, And if anybody was on our trip this year, they know that we had a bit of a cool season. We had a bit of a cool start to our trip. But typically the temperatures are sort of in the high teens, sort of to 20 degrees is what they are in March. I think we had the warmest day was around 22 or 23 degrees with the sun shining. It was gorgeous. It was almost bathing. Well, it was bathing weather. We went swimming. Let's take a closer look at the island, the country of Cyprus. So you can see the dotted line in the middle here, which is the dividing line, the so-called green line between the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, which is not a recognized country, and the Republic of Cyprus in the south. We are going to be flying into Lernica, which is the main airport on the island, and that's where we're going to be spending the first 2 weeks of our trip. So that's what's new this year is that we're going to be basing the first 2 weeks in Lernica, and the second 2 weeks over here in Paphos, which is on the sort of southwest part of the island. And from Lernica, and there's some rationale to this, just so when you're thinking about, if you want to do 2 weeks in Cyprus or a month in Cyprus, the benefit of Lernica is that we are quite close to driving up to Nicosia, which is about a 45-minute drive away. That is the capital city. It's also the only divided capital in the world. And from there, we also have access to the incredibly beautiful city of Kyrenia on the northern shore in the occupied territories, Famagusta, which is part of it is a massive ghost town. I'll tell you a little bit about that. The incredible ruins at Salamis. I'm hoping this year that we're also going to do a trip up the peninsula here, which we couldn't do before because it was a bit too far away from Limassol. So from Lernica, we get to see some of the political, historical aspects of the country. It's well situated for that, as well as some beautiful coastline. We didn't get a chance to go to Ayia Napa this year again because it was a bit too far away, but there's some spectacular coastline, the azure blue waters of the Mediterranean. The second part of our trip will be over in Paphos, and from here we're going to explore the western part of the Troodos Mountains, as well as the Akamas Peninsula, which is up here. We've got a bigger hiking program for those of you that like a bit more of an active holiday. We're going to be doing more hikes because that was something that was requested from our members this year, because there's some amazing hiking up here, as well as a boat trip to the Blue Lagoon out of Lachi, and various other things that we'll be doing on the Paphos part of our trip. So let's talk about, first of all, the accommodations that we're going to be doing. So when I was there this year, we found a brand new apartment hotel. It's basically like condos. It is gorgeous. And so this one is going to be our principal accommodation in Lernica. This property is basically like a mini luxury condominium building. And so it's got some common areas, got very eclectic design on the ground floor. And each of the apartments features a very large oversized balcony. Many of them have sort of a sea view in the distance, like you can see here, but they're beautifully appointed, very comfortable. You can see the furnishings. It's got a full kitchen in it, a couch, which is actually even a pull-out couch, which is not something that we generally use because normally most of our guests will stay 2 to a 1-bedroom apartment. Again, all very, very comfortable, luxurious bedding. Bathrooms are all modern. The apartments here are really, really gorgeous. As I say, I was in them. They had just completed them earlier this year. And so I'm very excited to be working with these guys because, quite frankly, you don't find a lot of places that are quite of this quality. You'll feel so comfortable that you won't even want to leave. But of course, we're going to drag you all over the place. I shouldn't say drag you, but we're going to take you on many fun and exciting excursions. So the apartments here in Lernica come in a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, each of which, of course, has an ensuite bathroom. And again, the pictures kind of speak for themselves in terms of the quality that we have in that property. And there will be a breakfast voucher program there. So there'll be a few different cafe restaurants to be able to do breakfast at, that you'll get a voucher every day that's going to be included in the program as normal. Over in Paphos for the second half of our LiveAway, we're going back to the Enemy Hotel. This is where we stayed this year. Again, a very modern property. You can see the blend of the classic sort of white Greek influenced architecture and the wood. Lovely dining room here where we enjoy our breakfasts every day. And the accommodations here vary between studios, one bedrooms, and so-called executive suites. They've just added a whole new wing on this year. In fact, the construction was going on at the very end of our stay in Paphos. And again, what I like about these is the fact that they've got standard and deluxe studios. Frankly, for the modest price difference, the deluxe ones were recently built and are more of a modern design, like you see in the apartments in Lernica. The standard ones are quite comfortable in the one bedrooms and studios. But when you're going to spend a couple of weeks' time, it's nice to go for a little bit of an upgrade in terms of finishing. You can see here much brighter colors, very comfortable. They all overlook sort of a big courtyard with a swimming pool, which is the main feature of this hotel. And it is about a 5 to 7 minute walk from the main beach, about 10 minutes to the so-called marina area of Paphos, which means there's a myriad of restaurants that are out there, not just Cypriot restaurants, but of course, Italian and Asian, and you name it, you can get just about anything that you like there. All walk-in showers as well. And on the top floor of the hotel here in Paphos, we have the so-called executive suites. These are oversized studios that are done in a lot of wood. They have huge balconies. You could, have a party with 10 people up there on the balcony if you wanted to. They have a bit of a sea view. You get a sense here, this sort of inlay entertainment, lounging sort of an area. Overall, very comfortable accommodations. I'm very excited that we've been able to have a new one in Lernica and continue our great relationship with the ones in Paphos. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that we're going to do. And I want to share with you some of the experiences from this past year, the things that we did and enjoyed. We provide a whole list of excursions to do for both Lernica and Paphos. You get an activity credit as part of your program, which covers probably a good 3/4 of the trips. But our philosophy is that we want to give you all the options, but all the flexibility to do whatever it is that you'd like to do, and then to not do, take as much leisure time as you want. And that was the one feedback that we got. And if you see our testimonials, I wanted to play some of the comments from some of our members from this year, but the video thing isn't working too well with the Zoom, but I will be attaching it to the replay. They really appreciated the fact that you have the ability to go at your own pace, right? You want to do something one day, and the excursions aren't every single day; they're sort of spaced out. So some folks, I won't mention any names, Helen, love to do something every single day of their trip. They just want to keep busy, and other people are just happy to just kick up their feet and read a book and enjoy the mild climate and go for a coffee and so on. So again, that's the big benefit here. So some of the things that we did, we had a number of terrific taste tours in Cyprus, both out of Lernica, in the eastern part of the Troodos Mountains, as well as from Paphos. And we got to not only sample, but participate in how you prepare some of the classic traditional dishes. Ask anybody about halloumi, which recently got a designation as just like camembert or cognac, or from France, or what was the name of the cheese in Italy? Reggiano Parmesan cheese, that have a designation as to where they're from. They now have the same for halloumi in Cyprus. They're very proud about it. And we'll go out and check out some places where they actually produce halloumi. And if you haven't had it before, you will certainly develop a new appreciation for it. We'll head up into the mountains. At this time of the year, you can still see snow, and we certainly did this year. But a few of the group actually went out and did a hike in the snow on the top of the mountains, and they had a grand time. And so, well, as I say, the temperature, the climate down by the coast is very, very mild, but high up in the Troodos Mountains that get up to 2,000 meters above sea level, you have some incredible scenery, and they actually do ski up there in the height of the winter. Usually ends in February, but this year they were still doing some skiing even in March when we were there. And one of the highlights up there, of course, the Kikos Monastery, which sits in this incredible mountain valley, and one of the amazing historical sites that we visit. There are so many and so diverse that it's hard to even do it justice in a short webinar. Nicosia, again, another one of the highlights being the divided city, that are the only divided capital in the world. You'll go right up to the Green Line and cross over on foot on the so-called Ledra Street, which is the street that is divided down the middle, and you have to go through show your passport just like you're crossing a border, and it's like entering another world because of the Turkish influence, because of the Islamic culture and the mosques and so on that you experience on the other side. But some of the most amazing historical sites are available in the northern part of Cyprus, and I think that everybody that went on our trip agreed that it was fascinating to see and talk to the locals and understand about the cultural similarities and yet the political difference that have polarized this country for so long. We'll do numerous hikes and walks. And one thing I want to point out here is that one thing that we really encouraged and a number of members took us up on is not everything is an excursion, something that you have to buy from us. We also want to, you can go and do things on your own together with your host. I know that my co-host Alfie and we organized some beautiful little walks just arbitrarily. And there's so many great hiking trails, both from Lernica and from Paphos, where you can just check out this beautiful, beautiful coastline. But we'll have more organized hikes with a local guide into the Akamas Mountains, along the Akamas Peninsula and the Paphos Forest, and you won't believe the countryside and how beautiful it is. So there'll be more on offer this year than last year. Famagusta is a city that was a sort of the #1 beach destination prior to the Turkish invasion back in the 70s. And now it sits in the occupied territories on the north side, but it houses this incredible church, which is now a ruin, as you can see here, and been converted into a mosque. So the story behind this is incredible. We're going to probably do a couple of excursions there because it is one of the most incredible walled cities. And this is something I didn't even realize until we toured it. And we didn't get quite enough time to visit these massive walls like a fortress surrounding the city that are still intact. And also a chance to see the ghost town that resulted out of all of these people being thrown out of their homes basically overnight when the invasion took place in 1974. So an amazing story, an amazing city to visit. And now that we're in Lernica, we're that much closer. Also in that area, you have a number of artisan villages in the so-called Lernica and Lefkara. And I know that I bought a little bit of art from one of the local artisans, as well as some of our other members did. But visiting these villages in the rural areas is, I think, part of the charm of Cyprus. And it's also why we decided this year to move to Lernica, because it's a little bit more chilled and laid back than Limassol, that is quite a big city in the meantime. And so we have access more to the rural part of the country. Once we get over to Paphos, again, the Tomb of the Kings is one of the highlights here. And I know that some of our members went back multiple times beyond just the guided tour that we had as one of our excursions, because the history here with, as you can imagine, given the location of it relative to Egypt, relative to Greece and Turkey and all of the various groups that went through over the centuries and over the millennia, you have some amazing ruins, and there's some terrific stories that you can uncover in Paphos, as well as in a number of other locations. Scenery wise, it was hard to beat the Akamas Peninsula. This is one of the walks that we did from Paphos, about a 40-minute drive away. We are able to walk up here and overlook this huge protected peninsula. Down below, one of the other tours that we did, you can see the bay up here almost towards the end where the Blue Lagoon is. Was another adventure we did on a boat cruise. We went swimming in crystal clear water. It was cool, I admit, but almost all of us went in and swam around for actually quite a while, and we enjoyed it thoroughly. And again, that was in the latter part of March. So that's what the weather is like. It's mild. The sea is cool, but if you're more than a little bit brave, then it's certainly something that we enjoyed quite a bit. Wine is an important part of Cyprus as well. Of course, we've got a couple of different so-called vino ventures, one from Lernica that explores the vineyards in that part of the island versus the one in Paphos that explores the one on the western part of the Troodos Mountains. And we get to sample a lot of varieties that you just don't hear of much because we don't, they have to some extent like the Cabernets and the Sauvignon Blancs like we have or that we're familiar with, but they have so many other varieties that we're not familiar with. And I would say by and large, our members really enjoyed and appreciated trying wines that were very different than some of the ones that we're accustomed to. We organized as well a couple of craft workshops. There's a wonderful pottery maker called Agostinos in Paphos that a few of our members went to. They had a grand time, and then everybody else was jealous that they didn't sign up for the trip. So we like to make these kind of things available as well, because when you participate in these workshops is when you really get a chance to get to know some of the locals and why they're there and how it is that they came to doing various crafts and various pieces of art. So as I mentioned before as well, of course, the culinary course, we have 2 different culinary courses on offer. And once again, I think most people found these to be real highlights because we don't understand much about Cypriot cuisine at home, but I know for sure that some went back and actually tried some of the dishes because it's remarkably simple to make, and we can get all the ingredients at home. New this year, we're going to be doing some other marine-based activities, so some kayak adventures in and around the Paphos area. Again, when you look at the color of the water, it makes you want to get in, even if it is a little bit on the cool side. But nevertheless, as I say, I can't say enough about how amazing the coastline is. And again, you get a picture of it here. This is down going to the east over towards Ayia Napa, these white cliffs and coastlines. It is just magical and an amazing place to visit. And of course, all the details are going to be in our program itinerary that is going to be released with the replay of this video this webinar probably tomorrow, but I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview here. As I say, we've split it into 2 parts. First of all, Lernica, where we have those lovely apartments, as I mentioned, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that you can stay in for around $4,350 for a 1 bedroom. Of course, you could have 2 couples sharing a 2 bedroom apartment. They are amply sized enough. Or you can have 2 solo travelers sharing a 2 bedroom. There's various options that you can do. And by the same token, in Paphos, same thing. We have a bit more room category choices over there, but it just gives you a sense of what we're talking about. And you get a lot for that because, of course, all of your local transportation, the choice of excursions. So there's a total of about $2,200 if you do both parts worth of excursions that's built into the price. So if you do the math, that's a good 25% of the overall price of the tour. We give everybody a SIM card because part of the fun was we set up a chat group in a messaging app called Telegram, which really enabled and facilitated a lot of communication. And hey, let's go out for dinner and do something special, or who wants to go for a hike, or who wants to take the bus up here. And so this really made the whole experience particularly special. We'll have some events and other things that we organize that are not on the program. I know on this past trip, we had a couple of incredible jazz nights that we attended in Cyprus that we're going to hope will be repeated next year. We saw a reenactment of the Blues Brothers, which was marvelous. We had a lot of fun. And so there's a whole lot more that we just sort of do spontaneously based on what's going on. And the only thing that you have to worry about in advance apart from everything on the trip is, of course, that the airfare is on your own, but we're happy to facilitate that. And of course, the trip cancellation insurance that is so important. For those of you who sign on early for our LiveAway in Cyprus this year, we are offering again our early booking bonus. So if you do a 4-week LiveAway, whether it's 2 in Cyprus and 2 somewhere else, or all 4 in Cyprus, or whatever it is, for if you book any of our LiveAways before July the 31st, you get a $200 activity credit bonus on top. And if you decide to stay longer for 2 4-week LiveAways and you book before July 31st, you'll get another $200 on your activity credit. So we had huge response to this last year. And although we have enough space, we don't have unlimited space. So I think it's a good idea. And based on the number of calls that Paul is taking these days, if you are interested, it'd be probably better to let us know sooner than later. And at this point, we can take some questions. And of course, if you don't have a question right now, you can email us later on. Paula.
Yeah, a couple of questions have come in. Someone was asking with regards to the month there in the 2 different regions, what could they expect for weather and packing?
Yeah, so I mean, the good thing is the climate. So, if you go to Madeira and Cyprus and Sicily and Malta, it's relatively similar. So you can expect temperatures generally in the sort of high teens or even low 20s. I know it was in Madeira, it was a little bit warmer than we expected. In Cyprus, for the beginning part, it was a bit cooler, and at the end, it got quite, I wouldn't say hot, but very warm. So that's a good thing. What you can pack for spring-like weather, the kind of weather that we would expect now in May or late April, May is what you would pack for, which means you don't generally need any big fur coats or anything like that. You can leave all that at home. But it's pretty much consistent across all the trips.
Perfect. Another question someone was asking is, do we provide all the information required for entry requirements such as visas?
Yes, so we will provide all the information well in advance. I mean, hopefully anything related to COVID, it'll be long gone by then. The only thing that none of the countries that we're offering have any visa requirement. The only thing that will be new starting next year, although probably not when these trips happen, is that there is a new electronic travel authorization form required for all travel to Europe that will come into effect at the end of this year, but won't be mandatory for the first 6 months or so. So we will give you plenty of notice. It'll be a fairly simple form to fill in, and unless you have some bad background, everybody will get authorized. So that's just a new little protocol that will come into effect later, and we'll give you lots of advance warning.
Yeah, good for everyone to know that we monitor those things and we make sure you're updated with just time.
Stay on top of it.
Yeah, perfect. I had another question here with regards to any mobility issues. Are there both the accommodations have elevators?
Yes, they both have elevators, so that's no problem. So I would say that, I mean, we had a couple of people on this trip who had somewhat reduced mobility, in the sense that, they were not really certainly up for any of the hikes or anything like that. But yet they enjoyed themselves thoroughly and were able to participate in most of the things. So we try to make it accessible for all. And because even though we may go in a group of 20, 30, 40 people, our excursions are all divided into smaller groups. You have the choice of one. So obviously, if you're somebody that's not as able to or not as quick, or whatever it happens to be, you can opt either not to go on the excursion, or we try to separate it out. And this is one thing that we did, so that we sort of had the people who were, super hikers and wanted to motor along very fast, and slower folks. So as long as you're able to get around on your own, you're good to go.
Perfect. Yeah, I think, and it seems to be the request was we got a lot of extra activities for the really active ones on board.
Our focus is more and more on the active stuff, because that's what people were asking for on all of our LiveAways. So we're going to be doing lots of hikes, lots of fresh air, lots of moving around.
Fantastic. Can't think of a better way to spend March.
Tell me about it.
Those are all the questions I've had come in for
Okay,
now.
cool.
So
Well, if you do have any other questions, again, you know our contact information, you know where to reach us, drop us an email. We'd love to hear from you. I will say, if we don't get back to you immediately, it's only because we have been a little bit more than busy the last few weeks. So please do indulge us. We will respond as soon as we can. Thank you for joining us. I didn't put on here, did I? No, the next webinar that we're doing is our African rail adventure, the Rovos rail trip, which is on, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, July the 4th?
June 2nd.
June the 2nd.
You're jumping.
Oh, I'm already jumping to July. So June the 2nd, if you're interested in a super incredible trip across Africa by train, the most luxurious train journey in the world, join us on June the 2nd for our webinar on the trip from Cape Town to Dar es Salaam. Paula has put the link to register for that webinar in the chat box, but it will also appear, of course, in our newsletter. Thank you again for joining us on this wonderful May morning, and I look forward to catching up with you all again very, very soon.